Okay, so today we're going to learn more halachas. Today we're going to learn more halachas about how someone has to respect his rabbi. In the olden days, rabbis were not just like a rabbi that comes to daven and shul. The written Torah was only from Bereshit till the end of the Bracha. The rest was said by mouth.
Talking about real rabbis.
Real rabbis, generation to generation. So basically, the way it used to work in the olden days is that all the Torah you knew was from usually one person. Every single, so like a Rebbe, for example, someone that you learn, most of the Torah you learn is from one person. That's when we say rabbi in Allah in general. Rabbi Muvak. In general, someone asked, why do you need a rabbi? We learned before that it's the hardest way for someone to do tshuva is if he doesn't know how to take techacha, which means someone rebuking him, because then he'll never do tshuva, which means the first step towards getting closer to Hashem is that you realize that you're not the smartest person and you're able to take from someone greater than you. So even today where there's books, of course, the first step to get close to Hashem is to realize there's someone that knows more than you, and even if he doesn't, someone to learn from besides yourself. So there's a mitzvah in the Torah that you have to respect your parents, but your teacher, it's that mitzvah, but even more, because your father only brings you to this world. Your teacher brings you to Olam Haba. Therefore, just like you have to love him, you have to respect your father and fear your father. Even more so, you have to respect your rabbi and just fear him. What happens if your rabbi, your personal rabbi? What happens if you find the lost object of your father and your rabbi? You have to give it to your rabbi first and then take care of your father. If your father and rabbi are both in jail, first feed your rabbi, then feed your father. There's only one exception. If your father is also a rabbi, even if he's not your rabbi, then your father is first. But in general, your rabbi is before your father. It says you have to be scared of your rabbi just like you're scared of Hashem. And therefore, whoever fights with his rabbi is like fighting with Hashem. And whoever thinks bad about his rabbi is like thinking bad about Hashem, like we see by Korach, that it says that he fought with Hashem when he really was just fighting with Moshe Rabbeinu. What is considered so? Yes.
There's a question.
The Zohar says only not to pray in front of your rabbi because
He doesn't know a Zohar. He doesn't learn a Zohar.
You don't do modim in front of them, but in front of any other person you could. By your rabbi.
Yes. So over here it says what's called a chaylik, what's called someone that's fighting against him? Someone that makes a yeshiva without his rabbi's permission. If he starts being a rabbi without permission from his rabbi, that's called a chaylik al-rabbi. It's just like the Korach people went against Moshe. So now, if someone is very far away, 12 mil, which is around 6 miles from his rabbi, and someone asks him a specific law, then you're allowed to answer. But if to make a yeshiva, as your rabbi is alive, even if he's in China and you're in New York, you're not allowed to become a rabbi unless he gives you permission. What happens if someone is doing an avera in front of you because he doesn't know, right? He's doing a mistake, or because he knows, but he's being amazing. Even if he knows, if you can stop him, then even if your rabbi's there, in any case, you right away have to rebuke him and tell him he's doing something wrong, because it says when it comes to the respect, kavod shemayim, we don't care about respect of the Rav. What happens if his rabbi passes away? So if his rabbi passes away, then you are 100% permitted to start your own shop. That's only if you're worthy of it. Someone which is not worthy of being a rabbi, and he comes to the show and someone asks him a question in halacha and he says halacha, like we just had the problem with the Shalom, the Shabbos, and I'm not worthy of answering, but I said it's kosher. But really, it says over here someone that says halacha which he's not qualified, says he's a shoyte rasha v'gasra. It means arrogant, stupid, and wicked. So when you in Israel, even over here, you have special rabbis for gittim, special rabbis for kashrus, for chashem mishpat, because not just you can't just make. Oh, I read it. I think I saw it. You have to be qualified. What happens if someone does know the halacha and he thinks he's going to be humble? That's even worse, because it's your fault that this other person is right. So usually that's what happens. The smarter people are too smart to lead, so all the stupid people jump, right? So that's the lesson that you have to, if you know, you have to speak out, but if you don't know, be quiet. And it brings stories over here from Mishlei, how examples, parables, how it considers people that are act like rabbis even though they're not worthy. Because a lot of times if someone doesn't know anything, it's called Amar. Someone doesn't know anything, so it's very easy to fake like you know. So some people get a kick out of making as if they're a Talmud Chacham, making as if they're worthy. So it's very important. If you're not worthy, be quiet. It's more because we said it's more important to respect your rabbi than your teacher, than your father. Therefore, you have to make sure not to ever say your rabbi's name. Let's say the rabbi's name, right? So in front of the rabbi, you're not allowed to say his name.
What about Rabbi this, Chaim?
You can't say.
I told Rabbi Chaim,
Over here, if someone is your Rabbi Mubak,
I wasn't allowed to say Rabbi Chaim.
if someone says Rabbi Mubak, you're not allowed to say. And therefore, a lot of Breslov actually don't say Rabbi Nachman because he's their rabbi.
He said
Rabbeinu, not Rabbi Nachman. So say now, what happens if you have a son? My name is Menachem Mendel, right? So if it's not in front of your rabbi, then you could call him Menachem Mendel. But that's only in a case of a name which is very well common. Everyone has that name. If there's only one person or 5 people or 10 people, then for the rest of your life you cannot say. You have to say a nickname. It shouldn't be your rabbi's name. That's only if it's a real name. You're not allowed to go to your rabbi and say, "Hey, good morning." You can't speak to him as like you speak to somebody else. So therefore, there's a way you say Shalom Aleichem Rabbi. It says you can't act him the way you would act with anybody else. It says you in a very respectful way. Maybe. What happens if you're middle of davening and you have to go catch a flight? So if you're in front of your teacher, you're not allowed to take off your phone. People don't know this. The halacha, if the Torah is out, you can't take off your phone in front of the Torah. So too, in front of your teacher, you're not allowed to take off your phone. And now we get to your halacha. You shouldn't daven in front of your rabbi and not behind your rabbi, not on the side. It says you have to be, I think, what? We're talking about Rabbi Mubak. I said before, we're talking about Rabbi Mubak. And of course, if you're very far, you're allowed to. But even if you're very far, he's down damas away, you shouldn't be right behind his back. It says when you leave from your teacher, you have to go backwards. You shouldn't turn your back to your teacher. Again, this is Rabbi Mubak. People, when they go to the oil, they go to the Tzaddik's cave, they also have the minute to walk backwards. What happens if you see your teacher? As soon as you see him, you have to stand up. And you shouldn't sit down until you can't see him anymore, or he sits down. Every single Yom Tif, you have to go to your teacher and say hi. A lot of people do that. They go to their teacher and their Rosh Hashiva. Yom Tif, exactly. Like you said, respectfully. What happens if there's a very, very great rabbi, but his rabbi is there too? You have 2 rabbis. There's the rabbi and then his student, but he's a big rabbi. So what do? So it says you cannot respect the second one. In front of his teacher, you can't respect him because it's disrespectful.
Father and a grandfather.
Right, you can't. Right, but in the case that, let's say, the very great rabbi, let's say, for example, the rabbi and the Frierdiker Rebbe, when the Frierdiker Rebbe was alive, right, the previous rabbi. So in a way, maybe it would be a problem in a certain sense to respect because you can't respect him. It says every single slave, every single thing that a slave would do to his master, a student should do to his rabbi. It says what the only thing is if you're in a place that people don't know your teacher, and you're scared that maybe they'll think you're a slave, a literal slave, then you shouldn't do it, of course. It says a rabbi should not stop his student from helping him, even though the rabbi sometimes made people calm down and fine. But it says over here, a rabbi should not. It says whoever stops his talent from helping him, from serving him, he's holding back from him chesed, and he's taking away from him yirah shamayim. It says any student which misses a chance to respect his teacher, it says he's causing the Shekhinah, Hashem, to leave the Jewish nation. What happens if you see a teacher doing an avera, or you think it's an avera? So the way to know, you have to speak because it's an avera. We have to tell him, our teacher taught us so and so. You don't tell me you didn't avera. You have to be smart about it. Every time, didn't you teach us exactly?
You allowed to lochiach your teacher?
Oh, it says not lochiach. You tell him, didn't you teach us this and this? You're not rebuking him. You're respecting him. You're saying, you taught us something. I remember what you said. What happens if you are saying something to your teacher, something that he said himself. So you have to tell us, you taught us this and this. You can't just say, oh, there's such a halacha. You have to tell him, you taught me this. Today we see a lot of times about Shuvah, they think they're smarter than the rabbi that inspired them, which sometimes it's true. Sometimes you can be smarter. But it's always good to be makar teva, to show hakar satei. So you meant to say, I remember you taught me this, I remember you taught me that, right?
So
It's
anything
respect.
you have to say, whatever you learn from a Koral Melvishim, all the things without all that. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter just from your rabbi.
Exactly.
Even if you learn from
If-
Rambam,
what happened?
you have to say that you learned it from him.
What?
You can't let them feel that
Yes.
you without all that.
Yes.
But
What
Allah
happens?
says Hashem all the time.
What happens if your rabbi passed away or whatever, and you're speaking?
Like, I didn't understand that. I have a super shot. I gotta ask a question. I don't want to ask.
Your question was,
So
you have to
why
say,
you said that you can anybody you learn from.
that's true.
You have to say.
You have to say. Oh, and besides, it's in the case. Besides, if you have a rabbi muvak, if you have a rabbi, you learned all your Torah from him, so you don't need to say every time, oh, my rabbi taught me this, my rabbi taught me that. Everything you say is from him. But if you say from somebody else, then you have to say it's from him. What happens if someone's rabbi passes away? He has to rip all of his clothes as if, and it says in the halacha that if your father or mother passed away, you have to rip all your clothes until you can see your skin. These days you leave the undershirt, but you have to rip I'm assuming your jacket and your shirt. And so too, if someone's rabbi muvak passes away, he has to rip all of his clothes. What happens if a rabbi, not your teacher, any rabbi passes away? If he's a very, very great rabbi, you should do a little kriya. It says someone that's Talmid Chacham. Now we're going back to the minhagim, the context of Talmid Chacham. He only speaks in someone that is on this level or lower. Someone that's smarter than him, she's quiet in front of him. What happens if your rabbi says, you know what, I don't care. You treat me like a regular person. So according to halacha, it's fine. A king is not allowed to do that. It's not he's not in control of his power. Hashem gave him his control, he can't touch it. But a rabbi could do it, but still the students shouldn't take it as like a green light to do whatever they want. They should try to respect him as much as possible. Now we're going to the flip side. Just like a Talmud, a student that has to respect his teacher, same to the opposite. The teacher has to respect his students. It says you have to love your students just like your children. Like it says in Shema, V'shinantum l'v'necha, these are your children. Because your real children are not your physical children. They're the children that learn from you. Of course, it's a great thing to teach your own kids.
That's why everybody were the children of the Rebbe.
Exactly. So therefore, you have to Banamatim, right? Exactly. So therefore, you have to love your students as if they're your children. And it says not only that. It says the rabbis say, I learned a lot from my friends. I learned from my teachers. I learned more from my friends, but even more, I learned from my students. Because the students are what makes the rabbi think over what he's teaching and look deeper. Exactly. Just like a small little candle can light up a massive bonfire, a small little student can shine up a great rabbi. So for this we finish today's parak, and the rabbi says that when you teach someone Torah, there's two aspects. Someone he learns so much, he's a neviah samayichin, like he likes having, and then you have to tell everybody. You walk in the show, you have to hear, I have a chiddush, right? So what's that? That means because you love the Torah so much, it's a great mila. You love the Torah so much, you should go teach everybody. But there's a greater mila, a greater level in learning Torah. That when you teach someone, you don't teach because you love the Torah, because you have such a great chiddush. It is because you care about him. Because it says that where is the greatness of Hashem, specifically the person which doesn't have it. Someone which doesn't know what you know. You should give it to him, not because you know it, but because you want him to know it. So every person should find someone in their life which doesn't know something they know, which doesn't have what they have, and you have the responsibility to give it to them, and not because it's you, not because you want to speak for people to hear you, because they need to hear it. Because just like you hear it, just like you know this, why do you know this and they don't know this? It's not right. So because you care for them, you should go out and try to help them. That's what was your question?
Have
a good night.
The first one I understood that you said one